quartermaster's stores to be kitted out with a Bergen backpack, sleeping bag, webbed belts, a wet weather poncho, water bottles, a heavy prismatic compass, a brew kit, 3 24-hour ration packs, and ordnance survey maps of the Brecon Beacons and Elan Valley, where the first 3-day trial, known as Sickener 1, would take place. Once kitted out, they hurried from the QM stores to the armoury, where they were supplied with primitive Lee Enfield 303 rifles. Allocated their beds, or bashers, in the barracks of the training wing, they were allowed to drop their kit off in the Spider, an 8-legged dormitory area, and have a good lunch in the cookhouse. Immediately after that, the harsh selection process began. "Christ," Gumboots said, placing his pint glass on the table and licking his wet lips. "It seems a lot longer than it was. Only 6 months? It seems like 6 years." Ricketts remembered it only too well. The few days leading up to Sickener 1 were filled with rigorous weapons training and arduous runs, fully kitted, across the deceptively gentle hills of the Herefordshire countryside, each one longer and tougher than the one before, and all of them leading to a final slog up an ever steeper gradient that tortured lungs and muscles. The first of the crap hats, or failures, were weeded out during those runs and humiliatingly RTU'd, or returned to their original unit. Those remaining, now fully aware of just how many failures there would be, instinctively drew into themselves, not wanting to become too friendly with those likely to soon suffer the same fate. "And to think," Tom Purvis said, shaking his head from side to side in wonder, "that at the time we thought nothing could be worse than Sickener 1. "It's helpful not to know too much," Jock McGregor said. "It sure is, man," Big Andrew added, flashing his perfect teeth. "If we'd known that Sickener 1 was just kid stuff compared to what was coming, we'd never have stuck it out for the rest." It was a greatly reduced number of SAS aspirants from various British Army regiments who had awakened in the early hours of a Saturday morning, showered, shaved, pulled on their olive green uniforms, or OGs, picked up their rifles and dauntingly heavy Bergens, then hurried out to the waiting 4-ton Bedford trucks. After being driven north along the A470, they were eventually dropped off in the Elan Valley in the Cambrian mountains of mid-Wales, an area of murderously steep hills and towering ridges. It had been chosen for its difficult, dangerous terrain and harsh weather as the perfect testing ground for Sickener 1. This grueling 3-day endurance test is based on hiking and climbing while humping a heavily packed Bergen and weapons, then repeatedly cross-graining the bukits. Derived from the Malay, Malaysia was where the exercise was first practiced. This last expression means going from one summit, or trig point, to another by hiking up and down the steep, sometimes sheer hills, rather than taking the easy route around them. It takes place in the most rugged terrain in the foulest weather imaginable, including fierce wind, rain, or blinding fog. Each conquered summit is followed by another, and the slightest sign of reluctance on the part of the climber is met by a shower of abuse from a member of the directing staff, DS, or a psychological killer, by the softly spoken suggestion that the candidate might find it more sensible to give up and return to the waiting Bedfords. Those taking this advice seriously were instantly failed and placed on RTU, never to be given the chance to try again. This happened to many during the 3 days of Sickener 1. Those who survived the first day, even though exhausted and disorientated, then had to bash her down at the most recent RV, or rendezvous, no matter how hostile the terrain. Invariably, when they did so, they were frozen and wet, often with swollen feet and shoulders blistered by the Bergen. They were then forced to spend the night in the same appalling weather.